And please welcome, we're going to move over to our next panel. Amy Allison is joining us as a moderator. She is the director of the North Carolina Outdoor Recreation Industry Office, and I am so honored to be spending time with her, also with our North Carolina Outdoor Recreation Coalition Board. She is involved in everything that we're doing here in the state of North Carolina with outdoor recreation industry, and have also had the pleasure working with her as in her former role as director of marketing at Eno. She's been in the industry for 26 years as an educator, as a mom, as a leader, as an active outdoorist, and I welcome Amy to there she is, to the session today. She is going to be leading us in a discussion with an impressive group of panelists around the topic, outdoor businesses reinventing their place. Welcome, Amy.
Thanks so much. Can y'all hear me all right?
Great.
Okay, great. I'm just really excited to be here and really stoked about the topic and all the topics that have been spoken about at the conference so far. And I was just thinking, we're only an hour into today, just barely, and there's already been so many great little nuggets that I've written down and want to kind of go back to and explore a little bit more. And I know there's so much more of that today. And I like the piece about not being perfect, and it's okay to make mistakes. And that's such a good reminder, because we don't get anywhere if we're just stopped by that and stopped in our tracks about ever moving forward if we're worried about those mistakes. So good reminders there. Well, as Sarah said, I'm Amy Allison, and I'm the director for the North Carolina Outdoor Recreation Industry Office here. And I feel really extremely lucky to be able to represent the industry in North Carolina. It's such an amazing state for folks to do businesses. And as she said, we've got a great lineup of panelists who are going to talk about, growing those businesses here and kind of reinventing their place in collaboration with their community. So before we get to those panelists, I want to kind of talk about North Carolina as a larger community and some of the work that's happening here to grow our industry and help our businesses that are already here to really, be the businesses that they can be on a national level as well. We have a thriving industry of gear manufacturers, outfitters, guides, retailers, and camps from the mountains to the coast. We're so lucky to have this diverse landscape across our state that really adds to the diversity of our industry. So we've got our yacht and luxury boat builders on the eastern shore, and drift boat builders in the high country, and our whitewater paddle sport industry in the western mountains. Our boating industry here and our paddling opportunities are really phenomenal. We're home to up-and-coming brands like Shabumi Shades that are seen on every beach vacation, most likely with someone lounging in one of our Blue Ridge Chairworks chairs underneath. And you'd be hard-pressed to go to any campus across the nation and not see one of our Eno hammocks on campus somewhere. We have top-notch mountain biking and road cycling opportunities across the state. And with Fox Racing, Cane Creek Cycling Components, and Industry 9 all designing and building cycling products here, you can build a perfect bike for your needs. And then you can throw in a custom-made Rottgeist bike pack or a Kitsbow icon shirt, and you're all set for an adventure. We're really a strong, connected community of large and small businesses, all focusing on building this robust economy in the state. In 2013, we really saw the outdoor recreation industry in the state emerge in our western mountains in a very powerful and collaborative way. A group called the Outdoor Gear Builders was formed as one of the nation's first, if not the first, regional outdoor industry trade organization, working together to amplify the voice and the presence of the industry as a whole in the area. The group is now 50 plus members strong and growing. And while it's called the Outdoor Gear Builders, the group is really made up of gear manufacturers, outfitters, guides, retailers, conservation organizations, and more. Really any organization that has a vested interest in the outdoors and in the region. And this organization is working together with our economic developers, conservation groups, and local colleges and universities to make strategic plans to drive the economy with a focus on outdoor recreation. And at the state level, we've been able to raise awareness around our strong economy as well. We saw the North Carolina Outdoor Recreation Coalition form and lead the way in establishing the Office of Outdoor Recreation Industry, where now I have the pleasure of sitting. This office gives the industry a voice at the state level and serves as a reminder of our collective strength in the state. And our state's also really showing up and investing and taking care of the places where we recreate. I've been able to team up with our state's tourism office and the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics to implement a statewide stewardship program called Outdoor and Sea. And through this program, we're going to tailor messaging to educate visitors and residents across the state on how to recreate in a responsible way, in a way that cares for our surrounding landscape as well as other users' experiences. Outdoor and Sea reminds visitors that everyone is welcome on our public lands and in our wild places, regardless of the color of their skin or where they visit us from. And a program like Outdoor and Sea is vital in taking care of our natural assets because they're the infrastructure of our state's growing $28 billion outdoor recreation industry. And while we all know that 2020 has been an unprecedented year, there have been lots of bumps in the road, but we have seen a major increase in our interest in outdoor recreation. And we've seen that outdoor recreation is vital for our nation's recovery during this pandemic. Activities like biking, paddling, and RVing are off the chart. And we're seeing that our gateway communities and towns closest to outdoor recreation assets are rebounding in a faster pace than we expected at the beginning of the pandemic. I was just reading an article this morning that was talking about Jackson County, which is based in North Carolina's Western Mountains. And they were saying that in this fiscal year, so starting in July, the TDA there has pulled in a full 75% of its budgeted revenue for the entire year. So in the past 3 months, 75% of what was expected for the whole year. And that's just astounding. Again, those levels, we didn't expect to see that at this point in the pandemic. So it's really exciting, and there's a huge opportunity. As Kristen was saying earlier, there is an opportunity around these times, and there's an opportunity for our industry to really lead at this time. And so with that, I want to kind of introduce our panelists that we're going to have jumping on. And so I see Tom popping in there, and we've got some others here. So these are really leaders in their areas and the economy as a whole across the nation. And really, these businesses are helping to build the thriving outdoor economy in the places that they call home. So we'll start off first with Tom Dempsey. And Tom Dempsey is the founder and CEO of SylvanSport, based in Brevard, North Carolina. And Tom, I'll let you take it away from here and tell us what you're doing in your community.
Thank you, Amy. As you know, I couldn't be more thrilled to be part of Western North Carolina, and specifically Brevard and Transylvania County here, where we've been for 16 years. And, my first visit to Brevard, Transylvania was right after I graduated from high school. I came here to climb on Looking Glass Rock, and I fell in love with the community, and I loved everything about its outdoor assets, but also the fabric of the culture, and really always dreamed about having an outdoor business here. And what I love about our business is we blend the outdoors with a strong manufacturing component. That's my quick intro. And is now the time to elaborate a little bit more, or is this a quick intro time? You're muted, Amy.
Sorry, yes. Let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and have you tell us what you're doing there in Brevard, and then we'll move on to Sarah and then to David as well, and we'll introduce those.
Okay, great. And forgive me if you can hear some noise from our factory in the background, because we are actively manufacturing SylvanSport Go trailers today in Brevard, North Carolina. And the demand this year in the pandemic has been strong, so we're grateful for that. But yeah, going back to my first, roots in the outdoor industry, I worked in the kayak industry, and I worked for Perception in South Carolina. And when I had the opportunity to start my own company with the founding of Liquid Logic, there was really no other place that I wanted to do it than here in Western North Carolina. And it wasn't really about bringing a new dimension to this area. It was really about taking advantage of what was already here. The natural assets, the strong work ethic, the manufacturing base. I've always said, North Carolina is kind of like having the manufacturing resources of the industrial Northeast and the outdoor assets of the Rocky Mountains all in one place. And there's really no other place like it. So, I'm lucky to have been able to put our company here and be part of all the creation of the entities that you mentioned earlier. I do remember back in the late 90s working with the Henderson County Economic Development to get Liquid Logic started there, and really thought North Carolina, specifically Asheville area, has the ability to be an outdoor industry hub in the U.S. And it did kind of start with paddle sports, and even before paddle sports, there are companies like Diamond Brand manufacturing tents and other outdoor gear here. So it has a long, rich history. And the proximity to the textile industry certainly helps that a lot, as I'm sure we'll hear more from when David speaks. But yeah, it's just truthfully a dream come true to have SylvanSport here and to be part of the North Carolina Outdoor Rec Coalition and the Outdoor Gear Builders. So we're happy to be here, and I'm happy to be here today.
Great, thanks so much, Tom. And next we'll jump in. There she is. We've got Sarah Calhoun, who's the founder of Radiant Pants Foundation, among many things, and just such an amazing leader. In her area, she's based in Montana and a leader in the nation as well. So welcome, Sarah. We're glad to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Amy. I appreciate it. Are you able to see my slides there?
I am.
Excellent.
I'm assuming everyone is as well then.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. I hail currently from White Sulphur Springs, Montana. I'm just going to give you guys a super quick background of what we're doing, making workwear for women, everything made in the USA. So the company is called Radiant Pants. My background was in, after college, I instructed for Outward Bound and then got into trail crews and that sort of thing. So I really needed work pants that fit, and this was back in the early 2000s. There was nothing on the market for women. So many of you are probably familiar with that look of squeezing curvy women into square men's Carhartts just doesn't do the trick, especially when you need some good functionality. So after about 5 years seasonally, I was working out west and decided to move to Montana. I had never been there, but it seemed like a good place, especially given all the outdoor opportunities. I moved to Bozeman initially, bought a copy of Small Business for Dummies because I didn't even know what a business plan was at this point. No schooling in business. I studied environmental science. And I was reading this book at a coffee shop downtown one day, and a guy noticed. We got to talking, and it turns out for the past 20 years, he had done production and design for a little company called Patagonia. So he is still on my advisory board, a phenomenal mentor, Richard Sibrel. And that's been really, really a great process. So I had a lot of learning to do. First thing was the name. So in an ant colony, the female ants are the ones that do all of the work. And this is a true story. The male ants simply breed and die. So we had a name. At this point, I was learning everything from the product design, finding US manufacturers, getting all the textiles lined up, the name, the brand, the marketing, the website, the financing, all of that. But I wanted to live in a really small rural town that was more ag-based. And I just read a book by the wonderful Western author Ivan Doig. And it's his memoir, This House of Sky. And he grew up in a little 900-person ranching town in central Montana called White Sulphur Springs. So I went and found an old historic saddle shop for sale on Main Street, opened the doors, and the women cheered. This was in 2006. We finally got work pants on the market. We did a lot of grassroots marketing early on, something we called Tour de Pants. We did pants parties all across the US and Canada. We had a beer sponsor and really got to know our customers face to face. And that was super important to our brand development along the way. 3 things I promised myself starting this company was, number 1, if I can't run a business with integrity, then I don't deserve to be in business. And I don't believe anybody does. Number 2 was that if I couldn't keep all of our manufacturing on US soil, then I refused to run a clothing company. And number 3, If I can't make it personal and have fun connecting with my customers, then I don't want to be in business. And I echo those sentiments that were just spoken in the keynote about really getting to know our people, our customers, our vendors, our communities. And when we know people, we treat them much, much better. So I think there's a lot of value in that. This is our local rodeo in town. Beautiful landscape. As you can imagine, we're surrounded by a lot of public land out in Montana, and this is the Smith River Valley. So when I moved to this community, Mark County was the lowest income of any county in the entire nation. That was back in 2005. And after about 5 years in business, we started the Red Ants Pants Music Festival, which was a pretty big undertaking. This is in a cow pasture just outside of town. And the first year, 6,000 attendees came to our little cow pasture, and that tripled the county's population. So it's become a pretty big event. We have had lots of fantastic headliners like Merle Haggard, Winona, Dwight Yoakam. The Steep Canyon Rangers have come, Tom, which is fantastic from your backyard there. Really a neat project, completely community driven. And with that, we also were able to start the Red Ants Pants Foundation. So that's our nonprofit branch in support of women's leadership, working family farms and ranches in rural communities. And with that, we gift money to different programs across the state. We have a girls leadership program to get our gals in leadership, something we need even more now. We also have a 4-day chainsaw and carpentry class for women. So it's really neat to see the whole combination of the skills, the work pants, the community, and the music, and celebrating with everyone coming together. So that's what we're working on.
That's fantastic. And it's great to see the landscape where you're based and to hear some of those numbers and really see the diversity there through your slides. And I want to come back to some of this, and we're going to come back to Tom as well. But before we do that, I want to introduce our next panelist, who is David Billstrom. You can pop on here now, and he is one of the newest members of our outdoor industry brands in the Western North Carolina area, and we're so happy to have him here and to see the work that he's doing to grow the space that he's living in. He's with Kitsbow. I don't know if I said that, sorry. So David, I'll let you go from there and tell us all the great things that are happening in your world.
Okay, how's my audio? All right. Well, I'm gonna see if I can't do a little screen sharing here for some visual aids. I have mixed results with this, so please be patient. Can you see?
While you're doing that, David, while you're getting that ready, I just want to remind the audience that we're going to have plenty of time for question and answer at the end. So as any questions come up, and if you're thinking of anything good that you want to ask the panelists, you can type them in and we'll be ready for them.
So are you seeing a map of North Carolina?
Yes.
Excellent. So the first thing I just want to point out is that we have been around since 2012, but that was in California, in Petaluma, California. One of the more expensive zip codes in the United States. And we made the decision to move to North Carolina. We had plenty of confidence in our decision, but the older I get, the more humble I get from those mistakes. And so we really view this as a journey, and we're trying to approach it with a degree of humility and a bunch of curiosity. So we landed here in North Carolina, and we got busy. Okay, where's the slide? So we have now been in our building for 1 year and 2 weeks. And in part because of COVID, in part because we moved on an entire company across the United States, it has been a pretty intense year. I'm pretty sure it's been 7 years. So this is a picture of the community coming around to celebrate our ribbon cutting. And the reasons why we chose Old Fort really started with people. So Heath here has lived his entire life in Old Fort. He can walk to work. He is now our assistant production manager for cutting. And we're in a building that costs quite literally 1/12 of what we were spending in Petaluma and is 10 times the size. We've got broadband internet right to us. So there were a lot of great things about moving to Old Fort for our established business as we made this transition to nearly 100% made in USA. And to echo something Kristen said earlier, we actually don't say made in USA as much as we say made in Old Fort, North Carolina. So we're tying Kitsbow to the town, not just the county or the state or the country. So 2 miles, this is Curtis Creek. This is 2 miles from our front door. This is Green Knob Overlook, which you can walk to from our front door. It's on the Parkway. It's a bit of an uphill walk. And this is also 2 miles from our door. Most mountain bikers will recognize this as where you might leave your car when you're riding Kitsbow Trail.
Hey, David, I'm going to interrupt really quickly. Can you put your slides on presentation mode?
Yeah, they are.
They are?
Probably sharing the wrong screen. Okay.
I just want to make sure that we're seeing, getting to see all of your good images here.
Yeah. Looks like it's my first rodeo.
Well, I forgot to unmute, so I'm right there with you. So there we go. I think everybody's seeing that now. Awesome. All right, go for it, David.
Okay. I'm going to quickly go back so you can see these things in a little higher resolution. There's Heath. There's Curtis Creek. There's the Parkway looking down at Old Fort. Here's the bottom of Kitsbow Trail. And our building is on the new Fonta Flora State Trail. So that's all the good stuff. There's a few issues here in our new town. There's no zoning, there's no planning, there's no town manager. There's really no full-time staff at all in a management or leadership capacity. There's a few sidewalks, they're mostly broken. You get honked at by the cars if you're a person in the crosswalk. So this is in the context of 30 years of decline. So no one's been in the context. Many of the people driving those cars honking in the crosswalks have never seen anyone in a crosswalk in downtown Old Fort. So I actually have a little bit of compassion for that. The historically black neighborhoods were excluded from the sewer projects, so they have septic and everybody else has sewer. There's no street cleaning of any kind. There's no affordable housing. As we bring people to town to work at Kitsbow, if they want to rent, there's nothing available. It's a food desert with the exception of 2 newcomers, and the town limits look crazy because they're completely gerrymandered in part to achieve some of that exclusion of certain populations. So we're in. We've got some ideas. So the first thing we did is listen, because we're the not from here's. I've only lived here for 11 years. I like to tell people that I'm not from here, but I got here as fast as I could. The organizations that we listen to are Old Fort on the Move and the West Marion Community Forum. It is remarkable leadership grounded from almost no advantage and plenty of suppression over the decades. Yet they haven't given up, and we're supporting them and using them as really our handrail and our true north on what needs to be fixed first, in what order. So a few of the things that we've been involved with is making things healthier. So inside our factory, that's a picture of our factory last week. Everyone stretches for 15 minutes, 3 times a week. We subsidize food for all of our employees. And we provide free PPE for all of our employees and their families, and frankly, any nonprofit that they're associated with who asks for help. And we pay 100% of the health insurance premium. So those mistakes that we learned from, when we moved to town, we offered 50% health insurance because that's what everybody does. And then we quickly learned that none of the production employees could afford that because the cash outlay every month was just not a trade-off they could make. So we fixed that decision after the first couple of months and made it 100%. So we now have to bake that into our business plan because we have astronomical costs for benefits. But it's just part of the arrangement we've got to make if we want to have a healthy workforce, which we do struggle with every day. Some of you watching, I hope, know that we have opened the Old Fort Wright House in the front of our manufacturing facility. It's a little hard to describe what it is. It's a cafe. It's a retail outlet. It's a U.S. Forest Service visitor center that we fund and operate. They've provided some training and some information. It's the only clean public restrooms in Old Fort. And that was a plan before COVID, and now it's really important. So we also formed a 501c6, which astute listeners will recognize as a nonprofit that is explicitly allowed to conduct political activities. 501c3s are prohibited from that. So we formed that in order to provide some leadership in Old Fort. And one of the first things we did was this cleanup day. We put this out on social media and through an email list that we maintain, and we had about 125 people, and frankly, too many people for the tasks at hand. Not shown in this picture, but across the way are people pulling weeds out of the cracks in the sidewalks. We've just started a campaign of trail work in smaller groups because of COVID. This was just before COVID in this picture, to work on the trails that we're using. And we're, again, listening and following others. We're providing a little horsepower. We provide cash, which is perhaps a little bit crazy since we're not profitable yet. But we are literally and figuratively investing in these activities. This one's led by the G5 Trail Collective. So just another example of not really our idea, but us putting some weight behind the effort. One of the more dramatic things that we've supported recently is the creation of a mural on the side of a building in downtown Old Fort that commemorates the bravery and courage of a Black man that helped Black children protest segregation in 1955. So well before civil rights really had a national level of visibility. Again, this was not our idea. We just supported the process with time, volunteerism, and cash. I think I'll just stop there. I have tons more I'd love to tell you about what the Kitsbow team has done, but we're going to run out of
time. Oh, that's great. We've got time, so we'll get back to you for sure. And I just want to say, David mentioned that they moved here. Kitsbow moved here November of last year, and going to visit them. And I think I was down there in either January or February of 2020, kind of before things went a little crazy. And then I got back there, I guess last month, and just the changes that have been made in that town from the work that you and your team are doing are just astounding. And in such a short amount of time and during a pandemic, it's kind of phenomenal to see what you guys are doing and the changes that you're making there. So I'm excited to continue to watch that grow. But I'm like you, your statement about you're not from here, but stay here, got here as fast as you could. I was working at summer camps. I came for one summer, went back to college, came for the next summer, and never left. I told the camp owners, you need me to live here, and they agreed. So, and it's all been history since then. So, I want to take a second and go back to Tom and talk about SylvanSport and some of the changes that y'all have been making in the Brevard area. And you recently moved to, I say recently, it's been maybe a little over a year now, moved to a new facility there. But the way that you were able to work with the town to kind of benefit everyone in the area is such a great story. And I think that everybody would love to hear more about that.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, as I mentioned, we've been in business here in Transylvania County for just about 16 years. And back in around 2015, 16, we knew we were going to outgrow the space that we were in. And we were in a manufacturing building in downtown Brevard And we had a newly created economic development agency here in the county. We had some new county leadership that came in at that same time. And I met with them and came up with this concept where we could work with the county. The county actually built a building that we committed to be a long-term tenant in. And we anchor the building and the campus here, and it's kind of a triple win. So we get to have the facility that we needed to do to grow our business in and to keep jobs here and grow employment here in Transylvania County. The county actually makes money from the building, so it's a profitable endeavor for the citizens of the county. And it really came together. I think it's the first of its kind in the state of North Carolina, anyway, where the county acted as the bank and the general contractor. As I said, we were the committed tenant, and we had the building built to our design. It meets our needs perfectly, and financially, it helped us because it would have been a difficult package for us to put together and do on our own. So having the county, aid in that process and really make it happen was instrumental, and it benefits the citizens of Transylvania County because, as I said, it generates revenue and profit for the county. So we love it. It's called the Sylvan Valley Industrial Center, and as I said, we're the anchor tenant, and we're occupying 30,000 square feet now. We'll soon be doing 60,000, and then the building, we're actually in the planning phases of doubling it from 60 to 120,000 square feet. So our manufacturing footprint is growing by the day, and it's just a great collaboration with the city of Brevard. Actually provided the land. It's on a 7-acre parcel that the city of Brevard provided to this partnership, and then the Transylvania Economic Alliance led the charge in making everything come together.
There we go again. Sorry, I'm trying to avoid dog barking in the background and all the other good stuff. I like how you say it's kind of a triple win. Everybody wins from that. Your business is growing, the town is growing, the citizens are benefiting. And that kind of goes back to the comments earlier today of, working together is really how we get things done. And you've really done that with your community. I think it's so easy for businesses to, get in their silo and heads down and just work and forgetting that there's all these other touch points outside of their silo of business to be able to help them grow, but also benefit the community in a great way. So I love hearing that story.
No, and indeed, and what's neat about Brevard and what I love is knowing the rich history of manufacturing here in this community. I feel like we're part of the third wave. The first wave, that was the extractive industries that came along and logged all the mountainsides and took away everything that was on the land, and that faded away 100 years ago. And the second wave was traditional manufacturing. There was a large paper mill here. There was a industrial film plant. There was a thread manufacturing company. And we're part of that next wave of clean, outdoor oriented, just futuristic manufacturing that makes a ton of sense, and it's great to do it built upon that long legacy of manufacturing prowess that this community possesses.
Yeah, that's great. And compared to the prior two waves, let's keep this third wave really going as long as we can, right?
Yeah.
Sarah, one thing that you mentioned earlier, you were talking about someone who was on your advisory board. And I think that that's interesting to think about, those key folks that we want to reach out to within our area, or maybe not right there, that can help us with our vision for how to, work within our community and grow. And so who are some of those, like if someone's listening in and thinking about building this team to help them, who are some of those key leaders that you would recommend that you kind of put on your kind of strategic steering committee?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I think, none of us would get where we are without help from those reaching down behind them. So Been super fortunate to run into people like Richard. That was such a fateful day to have such a good connection right from the get-go. And then he introduced me to some other movers and shakers in the apparel industry in Bozeman. We're also still on my advisory board. Folks with Montana Manufacturing Extension Center, folks that worked for Sims or whatnot that had good connections in the manufacturing world. So, and I had a lot to learn at that point, and just that big lesson of learning to ask for help and recognizing that people really want to be some part of something worthwhile, and they feel valued when they are asked for help. So that's been really valuable across the way. And now doing everything I can when folks are in startups or whatnot and give me a ring for help, I certainly answer the phone as often as possible. So rounding that out, having a good financial person is key, certainly. On my foundation board, I have some marketing folks and PR and communications and all of that. It's really essential as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if David or Tom have any, you're definitely working with folks in your community as well, and who else you would recommend kind of reaching across the aisle, and saying, hey, come on board and help us with this vision of what we see this place to be.
Well, I think like as Sarah's experience was, the being open, having that sense of curiosity. The next person you meet might not be who they look like, and they might be able to help in a way that's extraordinary. And we've had that experience here in Old Fort over and over. I would also say that during the pandemic and the PPE shift, the number of textile industry players that introduced themselves to us to help, as well as the number of players we already knew in the outdoor industry in the Western North Carolina area who reached out to help. At one point, it was a little bit overwhelming, actually. There were too many phone calls to return. And that's an embarrassment of riches. We now have vendors and supply chain partners that we didn't know about before the pandemic that are local or regional. And that part's been just awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to add to that, Amy, I think that one of the precursors to the formation of the OGB was, I remember in the early years of SylvanSport, a lot of other outdoor companies were trying to take root in the area, and we didn't have any type of formalized ability to help or any type of financial ability to get involved. But the one thing I had was time and experience, and I committed at that point in time that is what I can give. In the absence of other resources that I can share, I'm never going to turn down a request for help when it comes to getting a non-competitive complementary business up and running. So over the last 15 years of being here, I'd like to say, we've been a helping hand to dozens of other smaller startups in the outdoor space, and on so many different levels, from sharing marketing resources to manufacturing resources and connections, and just creating that ecoscape that sort of worked its way into formalizing into the OGB, which really has that as its core mission.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that shared communication and, asking for help. I feel like sometimes people see it as a sign of failure, or they don't know what to do, or that they're struggling. But it's so important to just be okay with stepping up and saying, hey, I need help with this, or hey, what's worked for you, what strategies. And it's so important for both small and large businesses to be able to do that and feel that comfort level with making that happen. So, David, you were talking about PPE production and that pivot that happened so fast. And both you and Tom with SylvanSport were really on the forefront of making that happen. We're so quick to do it. And we talk about our industry just being nimble and kind of having the ability to do that. And so, but there was also some other great collaboration outside of your brands and with other brands in the area. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about that and how that being a part of this community made that process maybe a little easier and we're able to pivot more quickly.
Yeah, Tom, I'll in fact, Tom helped us, so I'll defer to Tom.
Oh gosh, no, it was super cool, David. I think we were on the same wavelength. We were about 40 miles across a mountain range from each other and having the exact same thoughts on the same weekend. And we have very parallel paths in that. But I think what we realized is we're really in our core skill set here at SylvanSport. We're industrial designers and engineers. We do manufacture, but our passion is to create things. And so we've got a really good supply chain that is predominantly North Carolina based. And we knew there were things that we could put in play really fast to meet the need that was out there. And that was kind of the first half of the motivation. And then the second half was our camper business and our outdoor gear business was absolutely stopped in its tracks. So I was thinking, you know, we didn't reduce employment by 1 man hour during the entire pandemic period. And making that pivot to doing what we could do with our team was instrumental in that. And probably one of the coolest things in talking about local and regional collaboration was, I think in the first day or two after we had figured out how we were going to do this, I made a reach out to all the regional folks that I knew that might have a way to help us put our abilities into play. And the Land of Sky Regional Council, Nathan Ramsey runs that. He invited me to be on their board call, which was coming, or membership call, which was coming up in like 30 minutes from when I first reached out to him. So in 30 minutes time, I put together kind of a story about what we were going to do. And on that 10-minute phone call where I had an opportunity to tell that, I think when I finished the call, I had like 80 emails in my inbox from folks that were on the call that needed what we were making. And that was it. That was the catalyst. From that moment, we never looked back, and we never had a shortage of things to be done. So it was like David, the intensity of 2020 has been just incredible since then.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's been wild for sure. Earlier, we saw that great slideshow when the session started today. I love that picture of Looking Glass Rock that's right up the road from you, Tom. And then David, you showed some great images from where you are. And of course, Montana, y'all are just in such a phenomenal location. We love it out there, and it's great to see some images. So how I'd like to hear from each of y'all, like how the natural assets that you're surrounded with really, drives your business and maybe your innovation with your gear and the work that you're doing. And I'll let anyone who wants to jump in first can go for it.
Well, I'll jump in first to say that I ride through the Pisgah National Forest to and from work every day that it's not storming. So at least one of the employees at Kitsbow is a little more sane because of the outside. It is truly a stress reliever and a source of joy. This morning I came flying down at about 30 miles an hour through the beautiful fall leaves, listening to Green Day on level 10 or maybe 11. And, I arrived in a good mood. And that's just, you can't do that in Petaluma, California. You can't do that in downtown Portland. There's just so many places where you can't do that. But in all these 3 locations we're talking about, Brevard in Montana and Old Fort, you can. In fact, the way I usually describe it is Old Fort is the Goldilocks, because it's surrounded by national forest on 3 sides, and we've got water, gravel, pavement, trails, horses, really true multimodal. And we can live in Asheville if that's what you choose to do. Say if you're 30, ambitious, young professional, or you can live down the block for 1/3 the price. Say if you're part of the production team, and that population of that workforce extends to the east for at least 2 or 3 hours. So I really love that in between place, and I think Brevard has some of those same characteristics.
We sure do. From where I'm speaking to you right now, I'm about 75 yards from the bike trail that leads into Pisgah. And our team, we have a bike rack filled with mountain bikes right over by the side door, and our team rides some to work, some at lunch, some after work. We've got showers and locker rooms in the building to make that process even more fun. But the other fun thing is we're about a mile from one of the nicest campgrounds in Pisgah National Forest, Davidson River. And our products, predominantly being camping products, we get hundreds of our users that come. They actually make a pilgrimage here and they camp their way here, or they'll start their journey here and camp their way home. But they come here, and there is not a single day of the year, including mid-January, where we don't have visitors who are owners of our products that come in the front door to see us, talk to us, meet with us. And so being in the space that our products are used not only is great from a marketing and consumer connection standpoint, and Kristen mentioned in her talk earlier about that dialogue with your consumers, this place enhances our ability to do that. It's so fantastic. And it makes us all happy, like you, David, to be living here, and the views out the windows of the building are dramatic and different each day. And our gratitude for those is absolutely unending, and we don't take it for granted one bit.
Absolutely. I would echo all those sentiments. And I think what we all share is a genuine, authentic place of who we are with our brands and our companies and our people. And that's certainly represented across the board. In Montana, especially being a workwear company with ag and ranching and farming and tractors, and you'll go around town and see the women driving tractors wearing red ants pants and going out to cut firewood and doing all the things. So it's a really good pairing for sure. And with small towns like these, I think there's such huge potential for any sort of small business. But with the good internet we have now, and the low cost of living, but the really high quality of living with all these outdoor spaces, it's a great attractant for workforce to move in. Amazing historic buildings that need renovating on main streets that we ought to take advantage of. And I just think there's a lot more potential for smaller companies to move into these small towns. And honestly, the big sky of Montana really allows you to inspire and dream big and see what you can come up with next.
Yeah, absolutely. And that low cost of living, but high quality of life, I think is so key, and that those opportunities in some of those rural areas for folks. And it is great to be able to, ride your bike in and have everything that's afforded by living in these spaces. But I wonder about, and I know, Sarah, you were nodding your head when David was talking about workforce and low cost of housing or lack thereof. So what about some of those challenges that we face by being in some of those rural areas? And is that a challenge to be able to get the workforce that you need because of the places where we're all based?
We've been lucky in White Sulphur so far. It's still a small company, but we have not had workforce challenges yet. That being said, housing is becoming an issue. We do have a copper mine opening up soon in the county. So that's something to be taken advantage of, and just trying to think forward as far as what that looks like. But then again, we don't have our own manufacturing facilities in-house. We contract out with Seattle and then around the state. So we don't have quite the volume that these guys are probably dealing with. But we got a new school, a new library, a new brewery, new gear stores, new downtown beautification, a new barn quilt trail, a new gym and day spa and coffee shop, all these things happening. And we are no longer on the list of the lowest income in the nation. So
that's amazing. How cool. And that's, the work that you've done. And that's really what we're talking about today, is how can we come in as an industry and do this work to make those big changes. And it's very possible we as an industry are set up for success to make those changes happen. And so that's so cool too. I'm like, sign me up. I'm ready to come visit. You get all the great things there.
Well, I try not to think of them in the negative. I try to think of them in the positive. And when we first got to Old Fort, I would complain there's no zoning, there's no planning. We have one of the three places you could eat before we arrived was Hardee's. The other two were Subway and McDonald's. And Hardee's has this 150-foot, now I think it's 1,500-foot high sign. It's ridiculous. But that's because there's no sign ordinance and there's no code enforcement officer, and there's really no town administrator. So I flipped pretty soon to the other perspective, which is we have a blank canvas, and we can create the sign ordinance that makes sense for us. We can create a noise ordinance that makes sense for this place and the people who live here. And that's going to be a careful process, because we're owners and renters, but we didn't get here first. So we really want to balance between listening and following what the people who have invested generations in Old Fort, what they want to do, with what we know could be possible from other places. So I think most of the people who are participating today have probably been to a mountain town like Breckenridge or Aspen and seen what truly substantial growth over decades can do, and it can drive out the cost of the folks who both started there but also work there every day. First responders, teachers, librarians. So I like to think that in Old Fort, we're dependent on the town, and the town's dependent on us, and that's good. And that will get the best out of each other.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, I'm going to jump to a couple of our questions from the audience. So the first one is, what strategies have worked well, and maybe a couple that have not, to building and maintaining relationships with stakeholders in other sectors? And again, anyone who wants to jump in there.
That's easy for me to answer, because what we do, we manufacture RVs and gear. And so we're making aluminum components, plastic components, steel components. We're buying electronics and fasteners and all the kind of traditional heavy manufacturing type items. And it blends into actually what David said a minute ago about taking advantage of the assets that the area already has and just applying them to an outdoor related business. So if we weren't selling camping equipment, all the stuff we make is really no different than industrial equipment, restaurant equipment, airplane equipment. I mean, it's the same processes and materials and honestly a similar supply chain. We're just deploying it towards outdoor related products. So it allows us to take the outdoor conservation ethos and back push it up the channel to make those suppliers in our chain aware of our needs from a consumer standpoint, and then hopefully maybe translate that awareness to some of the other sectors that they supply to. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. David or Sarah, y'all have a comment there?
Yeah, I'd just say taking the value base that we use for our company and kind of our mission with community building into the other sectors that I've found myself in, also with no experience of starting a music festival and then learning how to book music and all the production and event work there. And really it comes down to building relationships and using that integrity, right? So that's it was a good challenge for an entrepreneur to start learning other industries in that regard, and same in the nonprofit work we do. So just staying true to the mission.
I would say that reminds me that we try to follow a maxim here. We don't always succeed, but we try to treat our vendors the way we would treat our customer, because we're so dependent on them. And of course, the pandemic has underscored the supply chain challenges. And but we're really in it together. They presumably can't succeed without customers like us, and we can't succeed without vendors like them.
Yeah, that's great. It's so true. All right, another one, and Sarah, this makes me think of the image that you just kind of painted for us of, the women out on the tractors and in the field and thinking about, the product that you're making. This question is, how does your place inform your company's innovation? Can you share specific stories, how the qualities or experiences of your place show up in your products?
I think that's easy for us. You're going to see an increasing number of choices from Kitsbow's apparel lines that are appropriate for hot, humid weather.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great and very pertinent here.
And with 80 to 100 inches of rain in Transylvania County, our Go Camper tents work pretty darn well too.
And our double knee, double seat, 12-ounce cotton canvas duck work pants hold up in the Montana winters, and our wool vests and moleskin work shirts and all the rest. Certainly designed for the climate and the culture out here.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. We're so fortunate to all be in places where we can build the gear there and then go right outside and test it and take it out and send it to people we know and trust who are going to use it right and really put it to the test for us. So that's great. Well, I think that is really all that we have time for today. And this has just been really informative and exciting to hear about the work that you're doing in your place to really, grow your local economies and work with other leaders and work in other sectors to really create a thriving economy there. So thank you all for being here. I'm excited to have had this opportunity with you. And enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you all.
Yeah. We'll pass it
Great
over
discussion.
to.
Thank you so much for leading that, Amy, and thanks to all the panelists for sharing their why and also how their place is really informing their product. I think one of the big takeaways from that discussion and kind of putting it together with the discussion we had this morning was really, the place brings that authenticity to your product, right? So I hope you guys are all ready for some neighbors, because you're creating a place that other people are going to want to come and start businesses as well, which will create even more collaboration, better synergies, and obviously bring more economic development to your areas. So thanks again for leading that out, Amy, and thanks to the group.